I first arrived to Waverly Middle School early on Monday morning, where I was paired with fellow 302 student Greg and Markiah, an 8th grade student. We quickly settled in and began to read. She proved to be a pleasure to listen to as she recognized punctuation, read with interest and inflection, and did so fluidly and confidently. Through my observation, I soon placed Markiah into the vocabulary bucket of the modified cognitive model, as she sounded things out, read fluently, and could recognize most words at first glance, but struggled with vocabulary and the background knowledge necessary to decode the meaning of unfamiliar language. Markiah stumbled on certain terms and admitted to not knowing what they meant, but unless prompted, she didn't ask for help. I noticed that she wouldn't backtrack when she stumbled over vocabulary or tricky passages in the novel, and instead seemed to opt for filling in these gaps through context she could gain by moving forward. While this strategy is something that many people use in daily life and can prove quite fruitful, she began to lose track of the events that were unfolding. On top of this, she didn't immediately connect to the main character, Vlad. To remedy this, Greg and I first attempted to have her draw the characters as they were introduced, though she didn't necessarily seem to enjoy it. We also suggested that she annotate her reading through the use of sticky notes, highlighting, and taking notes in the margin, but these strategies fell flat, as she neglected to indicate when and where she struggled. Markiah became visibly uncomfortable, flustered, or derailed whenever either of us would make notes in our own books. She seemed to crumble under the pressure of being judged when she felt like we were recognizing flaws in her reading, and we quickly abandoned these methods so as to not lose her trust. One day in particular, Markiah seemed hesitant to discuss her difficulties and was distracted throughout the day, checking her phone and not following along as she normally would. Instead, Greg and I took the rest of the day to ask her questions about herself as a person and as a reader. She told us that she sort of liked reading and writing, but didn't find herself doing so very often. When she was reading, she usually enjoyed mystery novels because it was fun to try to figure out what would happen next. In the end, however, her favorite subjects were math and science because she was good at them. Greg and I, history and English majors respectively, looked at one another. We had to find a common interest in order to reach her. Markiah expressed an interest in music and cheerleading. We connected with her through an interest in sports and opted to use examples and references that complemented these to explain tricky words or passages. We then talked about what kind of music Vlad might be into, and while she didn't offer any ideas at first, she eventually prescribed certain emo artists to soothe Vlad's bleeding heart. "It's hard," she said, "to find good books. Most are pretty boring," a sentiment that I, even as an avid reader today, remembered sharing when I was in middle school. She fumbled for answers when asked about her reading, most likely due to the fact that she didn't do much reading in the classic sense. She stated that she's a good reader in this class, but rarely reads outside of school. Instead, she prefers to go on walks with her mom, who she told us was her best friend. She also liked to spend time with her friends and her sister. With this, Greg and I suggested something new to her. What about talking to our family and friends? Can we consider that reading and writing? This sparked new interest in Markiah, told us that she texts quite a bit and that she uses social media such as Facebook and Twitter daily. On these platforms, she read and wrote conversational pieces constantly and also reads short articles or things that she finds interesting. We decided to switch gears and track her learning through something that she was familiar with, a Twitter page created in Vlad's name. Through this, we were able to track the events that unfolded in our reading without breaking her focus, tarnishing her confidence, and without making the mentor-student gap feel anything other than complimentary. It allowed her to get inside Vlad's head, understand not just what was happening, but how he was feeling, and enabled her to better connect with him as a character. To visualize Vlad, we scrapped the drawings and instead crafted a Bitmoji for him. The words that she did still struggle with, we made mental note of and would define at the end of the chapter through clear, accessible language or by citing examples from our own lives. Under this, Markiah flourished and began to recognize and relate to many of the conflicts in the novel. At the beginning of our Read 180 experience, shyness had prevailed, but by the end, I was shocked and impressed by Markiah's ability to not only connect with the book, but also with myself and Greg. Markiah loved the book, expressed interest in reading the rest of the series, and stated that her favorite character was Nellie, as Nellie reminded her of her mom. It'll benefit me as an English teacher if I'm able to create a map of students' thinking like this one, which will aid in both my grading but also in their learning, so that they can understand a story as it progresses. Additionally, it helps many students to visualize a character and to be able to see them on paper or online in a way that they cannot in their heads. To me, the term literacy means a person's ability to effectively communicate information or perform tasks in a variety of styles and mediums which are informed by their own identities and experiences. Literacy is not the same for everyone. As her infectious smile and uninhibited giggles found their way into our conversation, I began to feel as though Markiah was truly engaging in the conversation in a way that not only benefited her education, but addressed her as a person, a whole person, with opinions, past experiences, and an incredible sense of humor.